Hi, welcome back to FutureFast. And once again, we have Philippe with us. And for those of you who's new to this and who's not able to recognize Philippe, I urge you to look up the first conversation we have had with us, where Philippe shared his journey with us. And we also have second part of our podcast wherein he shares about the kind of work he's doing and the challenges in that. So I really urge you to look it up so that in this conversation, wherein we are going to talk about the future, you will have some sense of where Philip is coming from a point of his perspective on the future. So, having said that, for those of you who are here for the first time, Future Fast is an effort to bring in people who are doing various things and which we think are going to have an impact on the future and how they are approaching so that we can draw some pointers which could potentially help us in our own business and life. So enjoy the ride. And Philip, once again, thank you so much for making time to join us with us for today's conversation. And I think I have asked you even in our previous conversations about your perspective, but they were always a perspective on the future, but they were in a specific context, either from your journey or from your work. So today, once again, I want to start with what's your perspective on the future?
Thank you very much, Najru, for inviting me again. And I'm not a futurologist, but there are two things I know. And then there are all the things, of course, I cannot even predict. I know that we are 8 billion on this planet and that the average age in many countries is increasing. So people are getting older. So that is a fact. And another fact is that due to different type of relationship with social network, smartphone, new type of society where you have so many households with only one person in the household, there is another thing which is there, which is solitude. So we have more and more older and older people in proportion with the total population. And we have more and more people who are physically or emotionally isolated. I think those are two important trends for now and the future. Then, of course, if we speak about future, we can make plans and prediction. And I recently was pointed to a book, a 65 years old book, an American book, a series of books for teenagers. That book 65 years ago was predicting ChatGPT. So it was predicting that young student, secondary school student, would have machine to help them making their homework. So you see that we have in the literature since many years, at least 2 centuries, maybe more, we have people predicting the future, and sometimes amazingly correctly. So when you look at that book predicting, not naming ChatGPT, of course, but predicting machine to do your homework, well, that was futurology, or kind of. So let me go back to solitude and ageism. Although it was somehow predictable by the progress of medicine for ageism and by the development of our society when it comes to solitude, I think that society, at least the one I know a bit better, which is the Western world, is not well prepared to help people getting older or being older and to face solitude and correct solitude.
I
So
think it's
those are
yeah.
the two important prediction. I'm not sure they are prediction, but those are the two important trends I perceive from my point of view.
Well, they are very much a reality, and I think your prediction or your concern rather more is that we are not preparing for the imminent reality of aging and the solitude that comes with
Yeah.
aging. Well, it's ironical. See, today India is referred to as young country, right? Because we have 50% population is below 36.
Mm-hmm.
But funnily, we have almost 16, 17% of them who are above 60, right? And it's not a small number because, we have 1.3 billion is our population,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
almost close to 200 million people are about 60. So 200 million is, I wonder what's the population of UK today? Is it more than 200?
66 or no, 66, 67.
So you could
But the
imagine.
average age, I think, is way above 40. It's 44, maybe.
No, but a few European countries' population put together is the people who are more than 60 in India,
Ah, yes,
right? I mean,
yes,
it's a significant number.
yep. And
And even
then
government of India is thinking more about we being a young country. So I think it is a serious situation and serious
yeah,
reality. We are not really thinking of addressing. So, but yeah, we do see what's happening in Japan. There is a lot of robotics happening in terms of caregiving and all that. And I actually saw some of the videos, which is fantastic, uh, where we all have similar situations with the elderly living with us in our very close circles, and it's not uh, easy to give care with elderly with specific physiological or mental conditions like that.
yeah,
So one is dependency on robotics and technology. So what is your take? How do you think this will? Japan is obviously seemingly in the right direction, but one thing is that Japan is also hiring a lot of people for caregivers from India.
yeah.
They're
So
training them and a lot of these things. It's opening up an opportunity, though. But
yeah,
what's your take?
this conversation, Andrew, is a kind of brainstorming, right? So, but I think that we can address ageism. It will not be easy. There are two questions I see in front of me. One is caring, and the other one is the pension system. Caring, I cannot conceive that we start to park elderly people in some specialized housing, even comfortable and even with the best care on the planet, and that would solve the problem. The reason is that elderly people will need carer, and then you make the math, and then where will the carer come from, and who will pay for that? So I think that a major step will be to empower elderly people to care about themselves. And we see a development not only in remote medicine, but I give you simple things, and here the metaverse could play a role, or the augmented reality. Some people, young or older, don't know how to do things, which means they don't know how to prepare a soup. Imagine in our society an elderly man not used to cook because his wife was cooking for him all the time, and hope he is sadly alone. And he cannot help himself by cooking. And I take this as a simple example. You could imagine that, helped by some goggles, he will be, quote unquote, directed to prepare the soup. But that would be similar for any other thing, much more complicated than preparing a soup. So helping people to care for themselves seems to me a very interesting metaverse application. Of course, helping people to care for others is an obvious other development. So I think this we can relatively well address with even technological support, and you were speaking about robotics. Another thing, yes, go ahead, please.
Sorry, I remember having read about one of the Scandinavian countries. I don't remember which one. They have some kind of a credit system for the younger people. So they get some kind of credit for them offering to do this caregiving service to the elderly or those who are lonely, and it reflects on their credit, and they get other benefits, other perks, or also they can even transfer it to their future caring.
Yes, I can imagine that, and we have also that for typically in the Western countries for mother who stayed at home to raise the children, and then they have some kind of pension compensation or tax rebate or I don't know what, because they did produce quote unquote value and they were not remunerated for that value. And then of course they deserve in our system a kind of remuneration. So policymakers are creating a system to compensate that. So that also exists. So that I can see, but where it seems to be very difficult. And today, the 21st of March, we are the next day after the 20th of March. What did happen in Paris on the 20th of March is that the government pushed through a reform of the pension system. And obviously, I don't take any party for any side. The main objective was to increase the age of retirement or legal retirement from 62 to 64 years old. And I think and I don't know what is the best solution. So I'm not speaking about our solution here, but I'm speaking about society understanding that the world is changing, that the age pyramid is changing, that we are getting older, and that system which have been developed where our life expectation was 62 or 63 are not valid anymore when the life expectation is 77 or 78. So an issue to deal with challenges like ageism or solitude is the relative conservativeness. So the things are stuck, and I think we need a lot of flexibility to deal with what is in front of us. So that is about ageism. A problem which is, not people deal with ageism, so people are conscious they need to do something about that. But solitude, I don't think is currently sufficiently addressed. So we have the first alarming statistics. We have statistics about the number of young people who try to commit suicide in America last year. I don't want to repeat the figure because I don't know about the basis of the figure, etc. Anyway, it was high, and it was surprisingly high for me. Whatever the figure is, the fact that more people now think about committing suicide as before, which seems to be established by statisticians and scientists, is an alarming situation. And again, I need to be cautious because it's not really my domain, but I understand that solitude or lack of being understood, etc., plays a role. When I'm sitting in the tube, which I do almost every day of the week. And I sit in a carriage, and I don't know how many people are in one carriage, but let's say 30 or 35. And when you see that 90% are on their smartphone doing whatever, game, listening, looking news, whatever, they cannot be with the other people in the carriage.
Sorry, Philip,
Yes.
can I intervene here?
Yes.
Uh, See, one way of looking at it is that people are so engrossed with their own devices and all these digital platforms that they don't interact with other people. But another way of looking at it is, don't you think uh, all this as a response to solitude, these similar devices and platforms does give some kind of an exit for these very people who feel very lonely, and they're able to be part of another world through their device, through the social media, where they don't have to uh, they can connect with their similar people. So probably there is a way for them to be remain introvert physically and perhaps be extrovert through these avatars digitally. So that could be a solution instead of a problem, right?
um, I personally am not sure about that. So I don't make statement here. I'm asking questions, right? I'm not sure about. I think we human being are social animals. We need social contact, which is on-site contact, in-person contact. The interaction between two human is, of course, improved when Nanjo and Philippe are seeing each other through that screen. That's much better than phone or an email. But it is not the same as if we would be sitting in Bangalore in some coffee shop and drinking a nice chai. So this is not the same. The relationship I have with you, Nanju, so far is an ersatz, a replacement for the possibility to be in Bangalore, to be in a coffee shop, and to have a chai. And personally, I'm convinced about that. I go shopping like everybody, and I shop basically in two type of shop: the supermarket, where the social interaction are extremely reduced, and the little shop, where you cannot shop if you don't speak with the shopkeeper.
Uh,
And I go to the supermarket for convenience, obviously, but I also go every week in small shop for the social interaction. And the main reason to go there, of course, sometimes the quality of the product is potentially a tad better. Yes, that can be true, but the social interaction is important. Personally, it went that far that I moved from East London to South London. And I keep going in my farmers market in East London because those shopkeepers became friends and we speak with one another. And of course, I could go on my smartphone. Each one of them has a website, and I could buy my chicken or my fish or my vegetables per smartphone. Of course, that's possible, but that would not be a rich social life anymore. That's my
well,
point of view.
uh, see, the people we would like to spend time with, friends,
Yeah.
family, or like us, right? I mean, these some conversations are for that intellectual high, some are for
Mhm.
transactions, some are for fun. So we have options of all kinds. So if you are able
Yeah.
to do this online buying or transaction, which is purely for specific needs, right? And that time you get is something we could actually do like this, even if we can't meet and in a coffee shop in Bangalore or like you're in London. But at least we are still able to spend that time, which time we are able to save out of doing these online transactions. So, which is still a better thing than otherwise, right?
Yeah. Well, speaking with you about this, it comes to me another insight or observation is that the speed of the world, because we can order our chicken per smartphone, and we can do so many things because we have so many services, automated or not automated. Um, I think people are living more speedily than before. Then we have another potential issue is that we need to digest as human beings, as brains, we need to digest all those things which happen to us or that we read or listen to. And we have less time to digest this because we get more and more. That, again, a question mark, right? So no statement. What is on society the influence of the acceleration of impression, of contact, etc., etc.? Another question for the future.
Well, somebody had shared a video with me recently. Uh, I'll get to the context where it came from.
Yes,
So
yes.
this was a conversation. It was a podcast actually with a lady who talks about Indian Vedic system and such.
Yes.
So the conversation was with her, and the context and what attracted me to that video and the gentleman who shared it with me was that she was talking about uh, the new Nobel Prize winners for physics. Their effort confirms what was told in the Vedas. That was the something similar to that was in the heading. Wherein I heard that podcast wherein the host asked the guest who's talking about it as how do you correlate the new Nobel Prize for Physics, last year's Nobel Prize for Physics winners outcome to relevance of the studies or the reference in the Vedas. And she says Vedas are you're familiar with Vedas, right? As Vedas are the
I understand very superficially, very briefly. So you can
so
continue the conversation.
yeah, at a 60,000 feet, Vedas are referred to
Yes.
as the works which basically give a direction to the Hindu way of living, right?
Mhm.
Hindu philosophy
Yeah.
core comes from Vedas, which are supposedly written, some say 7,000 years, some say 5,000 years, but either way, it's few thousand years old.
Yeah.
So the reference in that goes that everything that we see is Maya, as in not real or unreal. And the universe as we see is unreal, the reference to that. And so these Nobel Prize winning research, they refer to it as universe as we see is unreal. And long back, somebody had also told me that the best example for understanding of Maya or what is unreal is when you look up at the night sky and see the stars. So the stars that we see, they are a few light years away. So technically, what we see is what existed few light years away,
Yes.
and possibly at this very moment that when we look up at the night sky and see the star, it may not be existing,
Yep.
and we just see, and that is Maya or the unreal.
Yeah.
So somewhere, so this is the context. Sorry,
No,
I
that's
was
okay.
trying to find an answer for that question. So if we can dig into spirituality, so somewhere, uh, are we moving towards being more spiritually aware in terms of how the Western physicists' efforts in trying to find answers and having found that what we have found only exists under observation and not otherwise? So, otherwise, it is referred to as being unreal, or in Indian terminology, Maya, and which is what, in the context of, I'm not a somebody who's read Vedas. I've only read few interpretations of very few things. So I could be shot by some of these experts now for using this in this context. But at a very high level, is it that? we are moving more towards being little more spiritually aware, irrespective of whatever is our religious practices or upbringing.
Personally, I would, I wish it would be like this, in the sense that spiritual awareness can be a strong emotional mental support for human being to live in probably 5,000 years ago, but surely no. I think I would not call it an antidote. I would call it an adapted way of life for the current situation. Would be a spiritual way of life, and a way of life where using any source, right, of spirituality and any books, the Indian books, the other books, or whatever it is, or whatever the what is. I'm interested in why do we have spirituality, or why do we have gods, plural, or single god, or any other spiritual system. And what I found in many conversations with different people is that principally about the why we are very, very similar all over the planet and through many spiritual ecosystem. We have that to give ourselves meaning for life. We have that to organize life in community. And we have that sometimes to explain the unknown. So those three reasons in whatever spiritual system are the three reasons why we have those spiritual systems. And when you look at this and you go back to ageism, you go back to solitude, you go back to speed, etc. If we start to think about meaning of life, life in community, and dealing with the unknown, those are references which help we humans to deal with the situation. And also, if we focus on why and not on what is that God or who is that God, but why do we have gods or higher beings or concepts, a dialogue across all those spiritual systems becomes possible because we share the reason why we have spirituality or not. Maybe that's a bit convoluted, but it is something I'm working on for the moment, to the point that with some colleagues, we are preparing an important symposium on a human-centric, decentralized, inclusive metaverse, which will happen in 2024 in the south of Italy. And after many discussions with my colleagues, they say, oh, Philippe, you need to speak about that. So I will speak about what I call navigating the divine space in the metaverse. And those references, etc. I'm struck also by the fact that gods have been created in an augmented reality, in an extended reality, not in this reality of my keyboards, etc. So what I'm sharing with you now are points of reflection. So those are not surely not definitive statement, but it is what happened in my head for the moment.
Right. Well, I would like to understand more about that, what you're planning to do.
Yep.
Here is one other thought. See, broadly, at a very high level, the Eastern society, right? India, East Asia, I guess China before the revolution, right?
Yeah.
or even Korea for that matter, where I think families always have had it. It is natural to have elders living, grandparents living
Yes,
with grandchildren, and it is looked up at as a duty, right? Uh,
yes,
Culturally, as a societal
yeah,
rules have been that the younger generation has to take care of the older generation, take care, right? Not,
yes,
and it was looked down upon if you were to say go live in a old age home, right?
yes,
It is looked at in a very derogatory sense. In fact, in my family, we've had those kind of conversations where an elderly actually said that perhaps I would be more happy in an old age home, but if I were to do that, move out of my son's house, the society will talk a lot of negative things about my son, which is not something I would like to do. Because of that, I rather stay. That is to let go. These kind of things. But broadly, the society has this kind of a, what do you call, some kind of a framework or a structure. Whereas we are today in India, right? We refer to it as becoming more westernized to look at having an elderly person in the family to be left in a care home or a old age home or something like that. It is looked at as a Western thought. Whereas I was reading recently, sorry, I forget where and what, but the what I remember is that article was suggesting that this particular Western country that I was reading about, I'm forgetting given the name, they were encouraging families to look at having elderly people living with them and trying to make some kind of sops to give. So here is where I'm coming from. So now, do you see the world going in the Japanese way, where have robots and machinery living with our elderly from a point of caregiving, and also robots? I even I think it's almost 10 years now since you mentioned that lonely people even having buying robots to live with them in UK,
mhm,
right? There are different versions of it. I saw some very interesting videos. Some of them even use those robots. They buy gifts to those robots. They have a name for those robots and all that. So one is that we go in a machine way with the AI improving, conversational AI increasing, getting so better that the world, humanity will go more towards automating this to find people or machine to take care, or we will go this eastwards in the sense where we talk about families taking care of their families. So it is designed, politically designed in such a way that we need to look after our thing versus go towards science and technology. What do you think? Which way will it be heading? Or what do you prefer?
well, I'm guessing I would prefer a mix of the two.
Okay.
Why do I say that? Because I would prefer grandpa to be home with me. And I would prefer grandpa to be enabled, empowered by machine if grandpa can be empowered by machine. If grandpa is living alone or if grandpa is living with me. So how do we strike the right balance between empowering elderly people to do things on their own, so not to be dependent, but at the same time to continue to be a member of the family. I think that that is that would be what I prefer.
Right. And as much as what you prefer, what do you see the way the world is going? Where do you think it is going? Probably will end up only with machines and robots and exoskeletons where people wear to lift and move heavy things, which obviously does not make them dependent, but they are able to serve, meet their own needs.
I must say that would be a prediction, and I don't see, I don't feel that I have a basis to make the prediction. I'm I don't know enough. That would deserve at least a team in the university with 5 postdoc people working on the question. I don't know. I know what I would prefer. I told you. What will happen? I don't know. The reason is, as we are speaking today about the future, there are trends like people getting older, people facing more solitude. So those are trends that we can feel. Then in future prediction, there is those black swan event that nobody is forecasting. And then what nobody forecasts, even less, is the reaction of the people in power, whatever the power is, political, financial, facing those black swan events. So not only we don't know what will happen, but we even know less how people will react. So I wonder, because you were wondering who is impacting the future. And my first answer would be potentially 8 billion people. The reason is that sometimes you have a leader, and the leader is moving things politically, business-wise, scientific, artistic, whatever the domain. But sometimes it's the mass of the people who, for some reason, start to move, even if there is almost no leader or no recognized leader. When you look at most major revolutions, of course, there are some few people triggering events. Yes, some people speaking to the masses, and then they were heard. But who did it? Not the speakers, the people who started to move in one or the other direction. And this is something where I will not make any type of prediction, because most of those movements are not predictable. I'm not too sure that the French Revolution was predictable. It's always easier 200 years later to explain how it came along. That's very easy.
Have you read this book, Singularity Now, by Ray Kurzweil?
No, but I heard about the book, but I did not read it.
Well, I remember reading it long back. It was published in 2008. And the reason I remember that is that in the book, somewhere, I think he has a conversation with someone in London, which is some Institute of Future, something like that. And I don't remember the person's name. He asked the secretary of that. So he's quoted in it saying that the man who will live to see 1,000 years is in his 60th year. This was published in 2008, and for the convenience, we'll say that he's quoted it as he said that in 2008. So today it is 15 years since 2008. Mm-hmm. So technically, as per that person's quote, who lived in London, and he was in his 40th year or 40 something at that time. So technically, the person should be 75 years old, and the person who will live to see his 1,000th year. So one side, there are a lot of people like like Singularity and like this Institute of Future. I'll have to dig that book out to find out what is that institution. And I used to remember that. I always wanted to reach out to someone in that to follow what else they're talking about. So one is that there are people who are trying to extend our healthy life, as in one, our lifespan is increasing, but at the same time, we are talking about increasing by, 72 to 76, 76 to 82, and things like that. While these people, obviously, they talk about exponentiality, so they don't talk about it. So for them, even 5, 6 years of increase seems linear, and they talk about exponential being will live to see thousands years. So, see, for someone like me or some people from India, at least, you read our mythologies or ancient histories where uh, they lived for 226 years. When he died, he was 227 years old, things like that. So there is some sense of reference point where people actually lived for more than 200 years, right? And then there are references uh, of characters, as in, there are multiple multiverse, right? Not universe. I think we talked
Yes,
about that
yes,
context
yes,
of multiverse, and wherein it is said that the creator, the Brahma, his one day is few thousand years. So, 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 though not in a very conscious mind, in a subconscious, there is a sense that there is a possibility, and there are some beings who live for 1,000 years or more, and so this extension is a possibility. The singularity argument, or the that research institute in London who talks about people can live, and of course they talk about that it is enabled because, one, naturally we our lives are extending, and also science and technology is facilitating. So we will be very conscious and able to live for so long. So what's your take on that? I'm not asking you to make a prediction, but if you were to be given this, I'll try to dig that out, which is that London institute that is quoted in Singularity Now book.
It-
But I
it-
do recommend you read that book or
it's
listen to
an
now.
it's an interesting conversation, and when you ask my take, of course, it's a personal take, right?
No, I
Um,
just it came to my mind
in the
because you
sense
talked
that
about aging
when
and
when I
loneliness.
was starting to be conscious of age was surely in primary school when somehow in the classroom a teacher spoke about life expectancy. And for men in Belgium, it was beginning of 60, 62 or 63. And now we are probably 15 years on top of that. So it's maybe something like 77. I'm not sure about the figures, but I know the order of magnitude is like this. And then, uh, personally, I'm above the legal retirement age and I'm busy as ever, or potentially more. And sometimes I think, okay, if I would live twice as long, I could do so much more. And I've always been privileged that I'm not getting bored. So even at school, I was not looking at the clock to see when can we get out of that classroom. So I would anyway keep happily busy for 100 more years. Maybe because I'm curious. And if you are curious, uh, you have an infinite world to discover.
Right.
And you have an infinite world to wonder. And if you are curious and you have been trained as an engineer, which means as a problem solver, you will come across an infinite number of problems that you have a pleasure to solve. Because let's face it, we do that for the pleasure. We are not always struggling and saying, "Oh, it's my duty." No. We have pleasure in solving problems. So to answer maybe around your question, I could happily live 100 more years. Yes.
Well, Philippe, I just Googled for whatever it's worth. Belgium
Yes.
now, as of 2021, it is supposed to be 81.7 years is the average life expectancy.
For men and women or only for men?
Average.
Average.
As of
Okay. Okay.
average, as of
Yeah.
2021, it is.
Yeah.
Uh, so, but well, from what you are saying, I was just thinking that uh, our uh, our we like to live longer, and you'd be happy to live for 100 years or more. And all the research is being done to keep us sane. And see, today, as we grow, as we age, right, as we get older and mature, and as we start talking about being healthy. So one constant thing is always about uh, keep a strict diet, keep a good exercise, don't cut your indulgences, be disciplined. So see, the whole essence of living, like you were just talking about, is that for the element of pleasure, right? We want to live a pleasurable life, right? You want to live happy, you want to do things that gives you pleasure, and to live that for a longer period of time, you also have to not do things that gives you pleasure.
Yeah.
So it sounds like that WhatsApp joke I received where someone says, you should not be smoking because it kills you, and he says, no smoker dies old. He says, oh, is that right? Yes, you die young. so,
yeah.
uh,
I don't know. I think again, it's very personal, and the somehow potentially we are also, and again, it's not my domain. What is conscious and what is subconscious? Um, we are driven by drivers, right? And some of us are driven by that pleasure. Some of us have no interest whatsoever to try even that pleasure. And we are driven by other things. Some people are driven by the purpose that they have in life. And I'm not even sure if they decided to have that purpose or if that purpose has been imposed to them. That's another question. So I must say that's a domain where I'm a modest, unqualified observer, in the sense that by what are we driven? And okay, if you say, I'm driven by this, and I say yes, then the next question is, well, did you decide to be driven by that, or has these drivers been imposed to you by society, family, friend, or whatever? I don't know that. I know that I indulge in food, so I can say that. And most people who know me will confirm. And maybe too much, right? So that maybe I should pay attention or more attention as an example. But this is not what keep me awake at night or working at my desk. It's not food.
well, coming back, Philip, do you see there are people? Who do you see are the people who's doing things that is bound to change the way we live in future? Do you see? Can you think of some people, whatever work they are doing, and you think, okay, these things are going to change the way we live?
It's difficult. I have the impression that for the moment, we are more driven by technological breakthrough than we have been in the past, driven by political breakthrough, as an example.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the tremendous pace of technology innovation, which is then taken over by commercial or not commercial companies to exploit the technical progress. I think that is impacting us much more than new political ideas of equality, liberty, fraternity, to take typical, but I think almost global French examples.
Well, see, sometimes it
That
need not be very positive also, right? Like, see, US impeached Nixon, right? As a president, he was
yeah.
impeached. And so, from that respect, perhaps he was one of the worst presidents of United States of America. But at the same time, one of the things that he did was to take out dollars dependency on the gold, and today much of the world and its problems are because of dependency on dollar, which is dependent on their own reprinting, right? They keep printing, and today we have had
Yeah.
so many banks collapse. So, I mean, one action of Nixon's presidency has such a long-lasting impact on United States and the rest of the world, and he was possibly one of the worst presidents. So, so not necessary that we need to identify with somebody who's regarded as somebody great or positive. So, in your respect, I mean, I just thought when you're saying that we don't necessarily have to seek that leader who changed it positively, right? It could be something. He
Yeah.
may not be regarded as a great leader, but obviously his actions have such a consequence for such a long time. So, who do you think, even as a technologist, who do you think, or uh, who is working on any science and technology that you see is going bound to have uh, some people obviously say Elon Musk, which is very seemingly right, right? He's building, uh, exploring, living in Mars. He's funding or backing a company which is trying to put a chip in our head. Uh, so he's
Yeah.
continuing to, yeah,
If we would do a list, he would be on the list, definitely, right?
sure thing, right?
Even if we do a short list, Elon Musk will be on the short list.
Still on the
I'm
list.
guessing that Vitalik Buterin should also be on the list, right? So
Okay, okay,
blockchain, and
yep.
decentralization,
No,
etc.
you think
Uh,
he's continuing to do something which what he's doing or what he did?
um, he did first Ethereum, but then
Correct.
he managed to do what they call the merge in a way which was very smooth. And I was, as an engineer, I say, wow, they did it what they were
True.
planning to do. So
Correct. But
now,
do you
I
see?
extrapolate, and
Yeah.
I never met him. Of course, I know of him. But if he was able to do that first and then that next, what is his next move? This is the type of things I'm starting
Okay.
to think about. We have, with the current blockchain system, we have some limitation. Last week, the European Parliament agreed on a new law, which is called the Data Act. They still need to discuss with the Council of the European Union, but it will happen. And one crucial sentence is that the smart contract must be equivalent to a contract, which, of course, appears as obvious. A contract, as we know, is mutable. A smart contract, so far, is not really mutable.
Isn't
So
that so in France or
it's
partially in Europe?
no, it's Europe. It's an EU law, and
EU.
it's a
Yes,
law.
it is there.
It's not a
Yeah.
directive. So it will be for 27 countries. Of course, you always have the time to adapt, and of course, for the moment, we don't have so many smart contracts. We have many more traditional contracts. But that is, we need, blockchain will go through more and more, few more iteration of major transformation to keep the advantage without having too many disadvantages. Think about airplanes. At one moment, the Wright brothers in Kitty Hawk a beach in America made a little spring of 300 meters, and that was the birth of aviation as we know it. And now you can go from Bangalore to Dubai in probably an Airbus 380. And that airplane has, of course, nothing to do with the Wright brothers airplane. And in between those two airplanes were many important iterations with complete transformation. think about the jet engine as an example. So I think that distributed ledger technologies, to take one technical example, will go through more step, as we have seen with plane or between the steam
Right.
engine and the micro electric motors, etc.
Correct. Philippe.
And that is what I see. And then putting name on the list, you have people like Elon Musk, who has a tremendous impact on energy and putting energy in little boxes called batteries and transforming life of the people and transforming how we have access to energy and how we distribute energy. This is huge, of course. But some people, and Vitalik might be one of them, I think continue, and he's still young, right? He can still do a lot of things.
Right. Right.
Can create the next iteration and the next iteration. To take one simple example, which is blockchain, because there are many other examples of those.
Right. Just since you brought in distributed ledger technology, and earlier you were mentioning your interest in decentralization, particularly in the context of what you're working for 2024, you mentioned. Yeah, I am of the opinion that the blockchain in its scope of being adopted at a wider level, right, at a large scale enterprise adoption, and even governments coming in with CBDC and such, I think somewhere blockchain will move more towards being distributed versus being decentralized.
That is, I have a colleague. His name is G.P. Vergne. He's a professor at the UCL School of Management here in London, who wrote a very important paper on the distinction between decentralization and distribution. And recently I was again exchanging with him about this distinction.
I would like you to share the link of that article if it is.
Yep.
It is in the public domain.
Yeah, it is public. You can reach it. I will send it to you immediately after the conversation.
Wonderful.
Okay?
Thank you.
And then he has a definition. And he says distribution is this, decentralization is that. And I found another definition by somebody else, who I also met and know. Then I asked GP, what do you think about that definition? And of course, JP was not really enthused by the other definition. And then I concluded for the moment with him that important is the distinction between the two. And the distinction that we need to have the governance of information exchange, and we need to have the governance of decision taking. And the two are distinct. If you call one decentralization and the other one distribution, that will be a convention. I think we will at one moment agree on the convention. For me, it is for the moment extremely important to understand in those systems, we need to have a governance for
Absolutely.
information
I think
exchange.
you hit the brilliant.
And we need a governance for decision taking. So that is my take on that for the moment.
Well,
also,
completely.
I give you, there is a consequence also for me in this domain. Evangelist, and I'm not an evangelist, I'm a doer. I don't try to convince people they should do this or that. They speak about decentralization and distribution, and then they speak, of course, about the benefits of distributing or decentralizing. Personally, I'm more keen to sell interoperability or transparency. I think what many industries, really lots of, many, at least honest people, and that's the huge majority of the people, they are interested in transparency. They are interested in interoperability. And distributed ledger technologies are enabling interoperability and transparency. So
See,
I think
both
that is more
decentralized and
important.
distributed. No, but both decentralized and
Yes,
distributed
yes,
gives you
absolutely.
interoperability and
Yep,
transparency. Only
yep,
difference in my argument is that distributed can give you controlled transparency, which is a necessity in cases of government because we still have countries with not so friendly countries as neighbors, right?
yep.
So you still need to have systems which can be controlled to an extent where what can be transparent and what need not be transparent. So
No,
that is something which
that's the scope of the governance, right?
exactly, and
In
within no
sophisticated
you
governance,
see
you have
one is
hybrid
governance is
systems.
necessary on both the contexts, but
Yep,
distributed facilitates this element of governance technologically as well. That is why I was trying to say that the I favor or prefer or actually I do evangelize more distributed versus decentralized. So that was
yeah,
why I was coming to it.
yep,
I
yeah,
completely agree with you on the governance aspect. I mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
the fundamental of it, no matter where
yeah,
you are.
yeah.
So, so perfect. And thank you so much, Philip. And do you want to leave any thoughts, or do you wish I had asked you something on this? In our This is the third part of our conversation. So, is there something that you want to leave for our audience and listeners, and including me?
No, I think we spoke a lot about many things. I read recently a poem, which I read again and again and again. And I will not I have a very bad memory, so I will not tell you what the poem is. What I kept from the poem is this: we should listen more, and we also should listen more to ourselves.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Philip. And
Thank you, Nanju.
wonderful. And all the listeners and audience, I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. And if you liked it, please go ahead and share it with people you think who will appreciate this kind of conversation. And once again, come back for more such future fast conversations. And until then, enjoy the ride. Philip, thank you so much once again. And have a great day and a great year ahead. Thank you so much. God
Thank
bless.
you very much, Nanju. Bye.
Bye.